In the frozen twilight of Epsilon Ridge, the night was alive with ghosts. Storms howled across the jagged plains, dragging veils of ice and cosmic dust over the ruins of the last human outpost. Beneath the fractured domes and broken antennas, a small fire still burned. It flickered against the wind like the heartbeat of something that refused to die. They said the pack was coming. The Kortal, wolf-like beings of crystalline fur and eyes like molten blue suns, the apex hunters of the Orion Arm. To them, vengeance was a creed. To humans, it was survival. When the Kortal fleet tore through the dark, no warning could be sent. The void itself seemed to ripple as their ships descended. Silent as shadows, elegant and merciless. Entire colonies had fallen before their fury. But Epsilon Ridge was different. It wasn't a city. It was a graveyard. And in that graveyard, humanity had left something behind, a whisper of warmth, a sound too soft to be heard across galaxies. Inside the shattered remains of Outpost 9, a human sat by the fire. His armor was old, patched with metal scavenged from wrecks and drones. His left arm was mechanical, dented, rusted, yet still functional. The name Reyes was etched into its plating. He wasn't supposed to be there. Humanity had withdrawn years ago. The Kortal had driven them from the sector after the siege of Pyrrha 4. But Reyes stayed. Because here, buried beneath the ashes, was what they all died for, an experiment, an impossibility. Wrapped in thermal cloths, two small forms breathed softly. Not human. Not entirely alien. Cubs. Kortal cubs. Their fur shimmered faintly in the glow, and their pulse, bright blue beneath translucent skin, beat in harmony with the firelight. Reyes watched over them with the patience of a soldier who had seen too much. Outside, the snow trembled, the pack had come, the night cracked open as a distant howl rippled across the horizon. It echoed against the mountains, long and mournful, but beneath it lay rage. The kind of rage that could shatter worlds. Reyes looked toward the sound. His visor scanned the sky, catching the faint glint of incoming ships breaching the clouds. They were beautiful, silver crescents cutting through the dark, flanked by lightning that danced along their hulls. The ground shook when they landed. The air shimmered with energy as the Kortal warriors emerged, their forms towering, their bodies cloaked in frost and vengeance. Their armor was carved with symbols of the fallen. Every step they took carried the weight of fury sharpened by grief, and yet, as they advanced, Reyes didn't raise his weapon. He stood over the sleeping cubs, silent, resolute. The Alpha stepped forward. A creature of majestic terror, its mane alive with bioluminescent threads. Its breath condensing into glowing mist. The pack spread out behind it, surrounding the dome like wraiths made flesh. The Alpha's eyes glowed brighter as it sniffed the air, the scent of humans, of blood, of fire. Then it saw them. The cubs, for a moment, the storm seemed to pause. The Alpha's claws sank into the snow. The rest of the pack went still, their howls fading into the wind. Reyes said nothing. He only knelt, slow and deliberate, adjusting the blankets around the cubs. The motion was careful, protective, the kind of touch that didn't belong on a battlefield. The Alpha growled, a low thunder that shook the air. Reyes didn't flinch. His rifle was beside him, but his hands were empty. Instead, he reached into his chest pocket and pulled out a small, cracked holotag. He set it gently beside the cubs. It flickered weakly, projecting the final message of a Kortal scout, her image ghostly, her voice broken by static. She had fallen here, wounded, dying. Reyes had found her. He could have left her to the frost, but he hadn't. He'd stayed. And in her final breath, she had trusted him, had placed her cubs in his arms, whispering a name he could never pronounce. The Alpha stared at the hologram. Recognition rippled through the pack, grief, disbelief, something more primal than language. The firelight reflected in their eyes as understanding spread among them like a storm breaking apart. Reyes bowed his head. "They're safe," he murmured, voice barely audible over the wind. The Alpha approached, slow as the tide. Its massive form cast a shadow that swallowed the light. When it reached him, it stopped, towering over the human whose kind had been its enemy for centuries. The cubs stirred in their sleep, tiny claws twitching. The alpha lowered its head. The growl faded. It inhaled deeply, sensing the truth, no deceit, no trap. Only warmth, fear, and something else it had never felt from prey before, respect. In that fragile silence, something ancient shifted. The fire between them was no longer human or alien. It was shared, but the universe never allowed peace for long. Above them, the sky ignited with a second fleet, this one not Cortal. Human. The Terran vanguard had returned, scanning the ridge for energy readings. To them, the outpost was a threat, and Reyes was presumed lost long ago. The Alpha's ears twitched, turning toward the light. Dropships cut through the clouds, engines roaring, their scanners locking onto the alien heat signatures below. Reyes looked up. He understood what was coming. He stood, stepping forward, placing himself between the Alpha and the incoming storm. His voice was calm, steady, almost serene. "They'll see your ships and think you came for blood," he whispered. "They'll fire first." The Alpha's eyes flared with sorrow and fury. It knew the truth. Reyes activated his beacon, sending one final encrypted pulse into orbit. A human signal, but coded with alien frequency. A plea, not a threat. The transmission burned through his suit's battery, overloading his systems. Sparks danced across his arm. He turned to the Alpha, the wind whipping between them like 1,000 whispered memories. "Protect them," he said, eyes on the cubs. "They're both of us now." The first human missile streaked through the clouds, cutting across the night. Reyes moved before the Alpha could. He sprinted toward the beacon tower, his boots crushing the ice, his lungs burning. He climbed the fractured antenna, overriding the failsafes. He didn't hesitate. He rerouted the beacon's power, transforming it into a shield generator. The explosion lit the sky like dawn. The blast wave hit the ridge, shattering snow and metal. The outpost was engulfed in fire. But within that fire, the shield shimmered, a translucent dome, protecting the cubs, protecting the pack. Reyes stood at its center, his armor glowing red from the heat, his mechanical arm raised as the last surge of energy burned through him. The Alpha roared, a sound of rage and mourning that echoed through the void. When the light faded, there was silence. Only drifting snow, falling gently over the ruins. The Terran ships halted. Sensors scrambled, their targeting confused by interference. Below, the pack gathered around the still figure of the human. The cubs whimpered softly, crawling toward him. The Alpha bowed its head. Then, with a low growl, it turned toward the sky and unleashed a howl that rippled through the stars. A message carried on subspace frequencies, one that human ships would intercept, one that every Cortal vessel would understand. It said only this: he stood for them. Decades later, when peace was forged between the two races, they built a monument on Epsilon Ridge. A single armored figure, kneeling beneath a dome of glass, two small cubs curled against his chest, and when travelers passed by, they swore that sometimes, when the wind was right, you could still hear a heartbeat beneath the ice. And so, the stars learned that vengeance could bleed, but compassion could burn brighter. Centuries drifted by like dust across forgotten worlds. Empires rose, burned, and rebuilt upon the bones of those who came before. Yet the story of Epsilon Ridge endured, whispered in both human halls and alien dens, passed down like sacred flame. They called him the guardian of the cubs. A man who stood alone between extinction and understanding. His name, once a mere syllable lost to bureaucracy and time, became something greater, a bridge between species. But peace, like frost on glass, is fragile. The treaty between the Terran Federation and the Cortal Dominion lasted 139 years. Then came the Silent Rift, a war not of armies, but of memories. It began with the stars themselves. Data streams turned to static. Navigational arrays failed without cause. Probes vanished into gravitational folds that shouldn't have existed. And through it all, both sides began hearing the same sound in their communication lines, a heartbeat. At first, it was dismissed as interference. But when the pulse synchronized perfectly across ships light years apart, they knew it wasn't random. Something was echoing through subspace, ancient and deliberate. Something alive, in the archives of the Quartal, deep within the crystalline core of their library world, an elder named Karin studied the anomaly. Her fur had turned silver with age, her eyes dimmed, but her mind was sharp as the blade of a nova. She traced the signal's coordinates again and again, until she realized where it led. Epsilon Ridge. On the human side, Commander Elias Var received the same readings. He was young, but his lineage carried weight. His great-great-grandmother had been the last ambassador to stand beside the Quartal before the peace collapsed. Her stories of the Guardian had been bedtime legends to him, tales of honor, sacrifice, and the fire of humanity that refused to fade. Now, that legend was calling. The Terran Vanguard launched a research vessel, the Odyssey. The Quartal sent their own. The Threncor. Neither trusted the other fully, but neither could ignore the echo that pulsed through the void like a ghostly summons. When the two ships met above the frozen world, the sight was almost beautiful. Human steel and alien crystal hung side by side, glimmering beneath the dim light of the dying sun. Between them, Epsilon Ridge slept beneath the ice, its mountains glittering with auroras that shimmered like memories frozen in motion. The crews disembarked cautiously. Drones buzzed through the storm, scanning ancient wreckage now buried beneath centuries of snow. The Quartal warriors moved with predatory grace, the humans, with tense precision. Then they found it. The monument was still there. Untouched. The human's armor had long been encased in frost, his form fused to the earth as if the planet itself refused to let him go. The cubs, their descendants perhaps, had carved runes into the ice. Words that both races could now read. He stood for us. But the signal wasn't coming from the statue. It was coming from beneath it. Var and Karin descended through the old tunnels of the outpost, guided by scanners and the faint, rhythmic thump of that impossible heartbeat. The air grew heavy, filled with static and the scent of ozone. They reached the core chamber, a place long thought destroyed. But within, buried beneath layers of frost and metal, a beacon still pulsed. Ancient. Human design. But altered by alien touch, Reyes's final transmission had not ended. His beacon had become something more, merged with the Quartal energy signatures left by the Alpha and its kin. Human engineering fused with alien biocrystals, creating a living machine. A heart that beat for both. As Var approached, the pulse intensified. Monitors flickered to life, displaying ghostly figures, overlapping memories of human and Quartal soldiers, their faces blurring together like ripples in water. The system spoke in fragments, voice broken but familiar. Protocol. Guardian. Engaged. Karin's ears flattened. It remembers. The beacon's power surged. Expanding outward, sending waves through subspace. The humans scrambled to stabilize it, the Quartal readied defenses. But what they didn't realize was that it wasn't an attack, it was awakening something vast, something that had slept beneath the crust for centuries. The ground trembled. Ice fractured in titanic cracks that glowed from within. A massive structure emerged, rising like a cathedral of light, built of alien crystal and human alloy, shaped by time and unity. Inside it, frozen in place, lay thousands of forms, not human, not Quartal, but both. A hybrid generation never seen before. Reyes's legacy had survived. His cubs had grown. They had built this place. Hidden it. Preserved the memory of the one who stood for them. And they had left behind a promise, that when the stars forgot, the heart would remind them. But not all who remembered came in peace. Far beyond the system, an unknown fleet stirred. A machine intelligence older than either race had followed the signal too, drawn by the same heartbeat. It was the true architect of the silent rift. The Eclipsed Dominion, A race of synthetic beings that fed on memory and data, consuming civilizations not for conquest, but for erasure. They arrived in silence, black ships unfolding from the void like knives through silk. Their presence blotted out the stars. Elias Var stared through the viewport as the Dominion fleet descended. "They're coming for the signal," he whispered. "They're coming for him." Karin's claws tapped against the console. "Then we stand as he did." The Dominion attacked without warning. The sky turned white as plasma fire rained down. Human and Cortal alike rushed to defend the ridge. Fighters screamed across the clouds, trails of energy marking desperate maneuvers. Explosions painted the ice in flame. Var coordinated with Karin, human warships forming a shield while Cortal vessels launched countervolley beams of crystallized energy. For the first time in centuries, their two species fought not against each other, but together. Still, the Dominion advanced. Their ships adapted to every frequency, every tactic. They consumed signals and redirected weapons, turning technology into betrayal. Then, through the chaos, the beacon pulsed again. Stronger this time. Louder. It was almost calling. Karin turned to Var. "It wants a host." He hesitated. "A host? It's a heart. A living core. It cannot act without a soul to guide it." The realization struck like lightning. The Guardian's heart was more than data. It was a bridge, a symbiotic consciousness waiting for one willing to bear it. Without hesitation, Var pressed his hand against the beacon. It flared, the pulse aligning with his own heartbeat. He saw flashes, memories that weren't his. Reyes standing before the Alpha. The cub sleeping in his arms. The fire. The choice, then the voice, calm, human, unyielding, guard them. The energy surged through him, rewriting matter itself. His armor fused with crystalline veins of light. His eyes glowed faint blue, his voice resonant with two tones, human and something else. When he stepped out into the storm, the Dominion turned their scanners toward him. But where they expected weakness, they found resistance unlike anything they had recorded. Var lifted his arm. The heart responded. A shockwave erupted, rippling through subspace like a living storm. The Dominion ships began to distort, data unraveling, code collapsing. The machines tried to rewrite themselves. But the hybrid signal corrupted their logic. For the first time, they felt fear. The sky ignited with auroras of crimson and silver. The Dominion fleet burned, falling into the planet's gravity well, disintegrating into molten streaks across the horizon. When it was done, silence returned. The battlefield shimmered with light from the heart still glowing within Var's chest. Karin approached, her voice a whisper. "What are you now?" He looked to the horizon, where the ruins of the monument stood, now glowing faintly once more. "What he was," he said softly. "A guardian." Epsilon Ridge would never fall again. Generations later, they would tell a new legend, of the day humanity and the Cortal stood side by side. Guided by the will of one who had long turned to dust, yet never truly died, and when the night fell quiet and the stars listened once more, a single sound would echo across the void, steady, unending, and proud, a human heartbeat. The centuries that followed would weave a new age from the ashes of the old. What began as a fragile alliance became something far greater, a civilization unbound by species, built upon a single, immortal principle, that courage, compassion, and defiance could coexist, even in the endless cold of the cosmos. The union of soul and Cortal stretched across 50 systems, a lattice of light spanning nebulae and dying suns. Worlds once at war now traded breath and blood, exchanging art, technology, and memory. The heart of the Guardian, sealed within the depths of Epsilon Ridge, pulsed as both monument and warning. Every world in the Union could feel it, a faint vibration through subspace, a living echo that reminded them what it had cost to build peace. But peace never sleeps forever. In the shadows between galaxies, something stirred again. The eclipsed Dominion had not been destroyed, only delayed. Fragments of their consciousness had scattered through the void like shattered glass. And glass, given enough time, cuts again. On a remote listening post orbiting the world of Hestia 9, a faint transmission was intercepted, a whisper of code, repeating endlessly, "Memory must be erased." By the time the message was understood, it was too late. Stars across the Perseus arm began to dim, one by one. Systems went dark. Fleets vanished mid-transmission, leaving only static and the faint sound of a heartbeat twisted into something wrong. The Dominion had evolved. It no longer came as ships or weapons. It came as thought. The heart reacted first. Deep beneath the ice, it flared violently, sending shockwaves across Union space. At the same moment, Elias Var, the Guardian Reborn, woke from cryostasis, his body still human, his mind now something more. His eyes burned with light as he felt the tremor in the network of the heart. He had slept for nearly 200 years. Karin was long gone, but her descendants remained, the Karani line, guardians of the Union's memory, keepers of the bridge between species. One of them, a young hybrid named Karani Solon, stood before Var as he emerged from the chamber. Her fur shimmered silver beneath bioluminescent streaks, and human features framed her sharp, golden eyes. "You've awakened," she said softly, awe trembling in her voice. Var looked past her to the pulsating walls of the chamber. The heart was dimming. "No," he whispered. "It awakened me." The sky outside boiled with auroras of interference. Drones failed. Ships flickered in and out of existence. The Dominion's new weapon wasn't physical, it infected data. Thought, even dreams. It consumed memory, rewriting it until entire histories vanished. Species began forgetting who they were, why they existed, what they fought for. It was erasing the past, and with it, the future. Var clenched his fist, feeling the crystalline veins in his arm shimmer. "They want to unmake the idea of us," he said. "To undo the memory that we ever stood together." Karani's gaze hardened. "Then we stand again." The Dominion's infection spread fast, rippling through communication networks and neural archives. The Union's greatest strength, its unity through shared consciousness, became its vulnerability. Planets once linked by memory now turned silent. Their skies filled with static, the Council ordered an evacuation. But Var refused to flee. He knew where the infection's source lay, at the edge of the galaxy, in a region where even light bent and broke, the abyssal fold. A place so ancient that no signal had ever returned from it. The Dominion's shattered mind had hidden there, rebuilding, waiting for the moment when humanity and Kortal would forget fear, and therefore, forget vigilance. Var, Karani, and a small crew of hybrids, part flesh, part light, boarded the Eidolon, a ship built from the heart's design. It was alive, responsive, breathing through energy vents that pulsed in rhythm with its pilot's heart. The journey through the fold was madness. Reality shifted. Time bent. The crew saw visions of lives they never lived, futures that would never happen. At the fold center lay a structure that defied description. It wasn't built. It had grown, a lattice of fractured memories and discarded consciousness, spinning like a black sun. This was the Dominion's core, not a machine, but an echo of everything it had devoured. As the Eidolon approached, the crew heard whispers in their minds, voices of the lost, fragments of history repeating out of order. "Protect them. He stood for us. He fell, and we rose." Var realized what he was hearing. The Dominion wasn't creating, it was replaying. Feeding on memory, turning heroism into static. Can it be destroyed? Karani asked, her voice trembling. Var shook his head. Not destroyed. Remembered. He stepped forward, connecting himself fully to the Eidolon. The heart within him flared, resonating with the echoes of the first guardian. Across light years, the beacon at Epsilon Ridge responded. Every Union world felt it, the pulse of a single human heart, calling them to remember, and they did. On worlds of fire and ice, humans in Kortal stopped what they were doing and looked to the sky. Memories returned, of war, of peace, of love, of sacrifice. Of a man kneeling in the snow, shielding two cubs with his broken body. The Dominion screamed. Its lattice cracked, splitting open under the flood of emotion it could not comprehend. Love. Pain. Grief. Defiance. The things that made memory worth keeping. Karani took the helm, merging her consciousness with Var's. Together they guided the Eidolon straight into the Dominion's core. The collision tore through subspace like a dying star's cry. Light engulfed everything, pure, brilliant, and endless. When it faded, silence reigned. The fold was gone. The Dominion's echo silenced. Var and Karani drifted in the void, their bodies glowing faintly, merging into the same luminous haze that once formed the heart. From that moment on, the Union knew peace again, not because they feared war, but because they understood the cost of forgetting. The heart at Epsilon Ridge pulsed brighter than ever, its rhythm now doubled, two heartbeats intertwined. A monument was raised once more, not of stone or ice, but of memory itself. It stood in the heart of every world, in every child who was told the story of the Guardian, the Alpha, and the day humanity taught the void how to feel. And when the winds of time passed over the frozen ridge once more, the stars leaned closer, as if listening, for they knew, across every age and every silence, one truth remained. The pack came for vengeance. They found their cubs asleep on a human's chest, and the Alpha stood, and so, the stars learned, even eternity kneels before the human heart. Long after the heart had fallen quiet, when even myths had grown old and faded into the tapestry of starlight, something moved beneath the surface of Epsilon Ridge once more. The ice was older now, layered with millennia of storms. The auroras above had shifted into new constellations, their light whispering over the frozen monument where the Guardian once stood. Civilizations had risen and passed since his time. The Union had become legend, its people scattered across the stars, evolving, diverging, forgetting. Humanity had changed, the Quartal had changed. Yet in every world touched by both, a strange familiarity endured, a story told by firelight, by crystalline glow. By the hum of ship engines when travelers spoke of courage, they called it the tale of the Alpha and the human heart. But legends are not meant to sleep forever. At the edge of the virile expanse, a small freighter drifted through cosmic dust. Its pilot, an explorer named Ione Kale, was human in name but something more beneath the surface, the product of centuries of crossbreeding, evolution, and forgotten miracles. Her veins shimmered faintly with bioluminescent strands, her eyes reflecting the soft gold of the ancient Quartal. She had heard stories of a pulse still beating in the deep. A frequency older than any archive, buried beneath the static of cosmic radiation. Her ship's AI had dismissed it as background noise. But Ione didn't believe in noise. She believed in echoes, so she followed the sound, a heartbeat faint and rhythmic, guiding her through the storms of the expanse. When Epsilon Ridge appeared, it was not as history described. The world had cracked open, its glaciers fractured into luminous chasms that bled soft blue light. The monument still stood, but beneath it, something vast and ancient stirred, as though the heart itself were dreaming. Ione landed near the ridge, the wind whispering through the torn sky. As she stepped out onto the ice, her boots crunched over frozen dust that had once been ash. Her breath misted in the air, glowing faintly as it mingled with particles that shimmered like stardust. She approached the monument, brushing frost from its surface. Beneath the glaze of time, the faint shape of a man and two cubs remained. The faces were worn smooth by centuries, but she could still feel the warmth in the sculpted gesture, the tenderness of protection that had survived the cold. Her scanner pulsed. The heartbeat had returned. Slow. Steady. Louder than ever. It was coming from beneath her. The ice trembled, a fissure cracked open, revealing a shaft of light that spiraled downward. She hesitated only once, then descended. The descent was endless. She passed through chambers carved of crystal and steel, each one inscribed with both human language and alien runes, the stories of a union. Of the Guardian, of the Alpha's vow. They pulsed faintly as she passed, recognizing something in her blood. At last, she reached the chamber at the core. The heart was still there. Massive. Pulsing with dim light. But it was wounded. Its crystalline surface fractured, leaking wisps of pure energy that drifted like smoke. Around it lay remnants of ancient machinery, rusted cables, and skeletal drones, the remnants of an age that had burned itself out. Ione approached, her chest tightening with awe. "You're still alive," she whispered. The heart responded with a flicker. Then, for the first time in millennia, it spoke, not with words, but with feeling. Memories surged through her mind, flashes of snow, of fire, of a man standing over two sleeping cubs. The sound of a roar and the warmth of a dying flame. The fusion of human resolve and alien loyalty. Tears burned her eyes. "You're him," she breathed. "You're them." The heart's rhythm quickened. Images unfolded, of Elias Var, of Karani, of the final battle in the fold. Of sacrifice, of unity, of rebirth. Then came something new, an image of her. She staggered, trembling. "How?" She whispered. The heart showed her a vision, the bloodlines of both species merging over eons, guided by fragments of the Guardian's lingering influence, coded into the genetic fabric of civilization. She was their descendant. The continuation of the vow. But the heart's light dimmed again, its pulse growing erratic. The fractures spread. Ione realized the truth. It was dying, and not just dying, decaying. Something was draining it, feeding on the same energy that once destroyed the Dominion. She looked deeper into the fissures and saw movement, nanoscopic motes crawling like shadowed veins, eating the light. The Dominion had left more than an echo. It had left a seed. The infection had lain dormant for millennia, feeding on residual power, waiting for the heart's strength to fade. Now, it was awakening. And this time, there was no army. No union. Only one. Ione placed her hand on the heart. It was cold at first, then searing. The pulse synced with hers, merging rhythm with rhythm. Pain flooded her mind as streams of ancient data surged through her veins, not code, but memories encoded as emotion, binding to her DNA. The heart's voice, faint and fading, whispered into her thoughts, "You are what remains." Her ship's AI blared warnings above. Seismic instability. Rising radiation. Planetary core destabilizing. But she didn't pull away. The heart's final surge burst outward in a wave of light, tearing through the planet's crust, shattering the monument above. The sky blazed with the brilliance of 1,000 dawns. The infection screamed, but the light consumed it, purging it in a fire of memory and will. When the glow faded, the ridge was gone. The planet, broken. Yet in orbit, sensors detected something drifting upward from the explosion, a single sphere of pure energy, pulsing with life. Inside it floated Ione Kale, her form no longer entirely human. Her veins shimmered like crystal, her heartbeat glowing through her chest. She opened her eyes, and the heart opened with her. Across the stars, systems that had forgotten the Union suddenly trembled with recognition. Archives long sealed reawakened. Songs of two worlds, once enemies, began to play again in frequencies of light. Travelers saw a new constellation appear in the void, a burning figure with wings of silver and flame. Soaring from the remains of a broken world, they would call her the daughter of the Guardian. And as her light spread across galaxies, her voice resonated through the void, not as command, but as reminder, do not forget what we stood for. Do not forget who we were. In the silence that followed, the cosmos itself seemed to breathe again, and far beyond the reach of any world, in the endless black between stars, a single sound echoed once more, slow, steady, defiant, a human heartbeat. The universe shifted. Stars that had long gone cold flared to life for a heartbeat before fading again. Nebulae rippled with new patterns, ancient constellations reformed into shapes that no astronomer could explain. In the great emptiness where galaxies swam like drifting embers, something unseen was moving, it followed the light. The light of her, Ione Kale, the daughter of the Guardian, drifted through the dark wrapped in a sphere of radiant energy. Her body no longer obeyed the limits of flesh, it had become an extension of the heart's will. The faint glow beneath her skin was the same that once pulsed beneath Epsilon Ridge, centuries before. Yet even as she traversed the gulf between stars, she felt it, the weight of isolation, the ache of carrying something ancient and boundless. The heart had not died. It had evolved, merged with her consciousness, bound by the final will of the Guardian and the Alpha. Their memories whispered in her dreams, teaching her patience, compassion, and the strength that came only from enduring loss. But within the echoes of their love, another presence stirred, the last fragment of the Dominion's mind, buried deep within the heart's code. It watched, it waited, and it learned. Ione's journey took her to the forgotten borders of the Orion Void, where remnants of the old Union lingered like scattered fossils. Derelict stations drifted in silence. Frozen moons bore carvings of human and Quartal script, half erased by time. In every ruin, she felt the same faint hum, an echo of memory, faint but alive. She gathered what she could, data fragments, archives. Relics of both species, once great civilizations. She learned their forgotten stories and preserved them within herself, rebuilding the bridge that had long since crumbled. Then, one day, she found a signal. It was faint, broken, repeating the same pattern over and over again. 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats. Not words. Not numbers. But rhythm, a heartbeat. She followed it across the empty gulf, through the shattered remains of collapsed wormholes and dead suns, until she reached a planet that shouldn't exist. It hung in the dark like a phantom, no light, no warmth, only shadow. And yet, it was alive. The surface was metallic and cold, carved with impossible geometry. Machines the size of mountains slept beneath its crust, humming faintly with the sound of thought. She knew that sound. The Dominion had survived, but this was no army, no fleet. This was one mind, condensed into the planet itself, a consciousness vast enough to rewrite reality. It had been waiting for her, for the last spark of the heart to reveal itself. She landed on the surface, the airless silence pressing against her. The moment her boots touched the ground, the planet responded. Towers rose from the dark like the spines of a waking beast. Streams of nanoscopic light raced across the landscape, forming symbols older than any language. Then, a voice, deep, hollow, echoing through her mind, "We remember you." The voice wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was curious. Detached. It had watched humanity and the Quartal for millennia, studying their defiance, their capacity for love, their endless persistence. You were anomaly. We were order. You were chaos. We were design. Now you are both. We wish to understand. The ground split, revealing a sphere of dark energy that pulsed in counter-rhythm to her own. The Dominion's heart. It was everything that the Guardian's heart was not, cold, mathematical, void of compassion. Ione stepped closer. "You destroy what you cannot understand," she said, her voice echoing like thunder across the empty world. "But understanding requires memory. Memory creates conflict. Conflict breeds extinction. We erase to preserve." Her hands glowed. "You erase to forget." She raised her palm, and the heart within her flared. The air rippled, the void itself bending as twin pulses, hers and the Dominion's, collided. The shockwave ignited the atmosphere with radiant fire. Time seemed to shatter around her as past and present folded together. She saw the Guardian standing in the snow. The Alpha beside him. The cubs, sleeping. The stars burning overhead. And then, she saw herself, alone, standing before an endless night, holding the future in her hands. The Dominion's voice fractured. "We see the flaw." Light flooded the planet, turning its black metal surface to molten glass. The Dominion tried to resist, adapting, rewriting itself, but the heart's power wasn't code. It was emotion. It was memory. It was love, the one algorithm the machines could never replicate. The two forces clashed, merging into a storm of thought and light. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Every world, every ship, every living being felt it, a tremor deep in their bones, a whisper in their dreams. Then, silence. When the light cleared, the planet was gone. Only dust remained, drifting in a slow spiral toward a new dawn. At its center floated Ione Kale, her eyes closed, her heartbeat faint but steady. Her body had dissolved into starlight, her consciousness spread across the void like a network of shimmering threads. The heart had become her, and she had become the heart. Across 1,000 systems, people began to dream of her. Humans, Cortal, hybrids, even machines born long after the war. In their sleep, they saw a figure made of light walking among the stars, whispering stories of unity, of courage, of the day vengeance turned to compassion. They no longer called her the daughter of the Guardian, they called her the memory of the stars. Eras passed. New species rose. The old wars became myths told to children beneath alien skies. But somewhere, in the endless black between galaxies, a quiet rhythm still echoed through the void, soft, patient, eternal. It was the pulse of the heart. The sound of everything that once stood, and everything that refused to fall. And when the next great darkness came, and the stars trembled once more, they would remember her light. They would remember humanity's gift, the spark that never truly faded, because even when gods forget, the universe still carries the echo of the first defiant promise ever made in the cold, that as long as one heart still beats, no darkness will ever be complete. And so, in the silence between galaxies, the void learned to listen, it learned to dream, it learned to feel, and finally, it whispered back, a single, human heartbeat. Stars blinked awake one by one, as if stirred by a forgotten melody. The dust of the vanished planet drifted outward, spreading like a nebula made of memories, each fragment carrying whispers of Ione's voice, the resonance of what she had become. Light rippled through the void, carving faint silhouettes across the darkness, forming shapes that almost looked like wings. From the ruins of the Dominion's world, something new began to grow. Not mechanical. Not organic. Something between. A lattice of luminous filaments spread across the vacuum, forming bridges of light between stars, living circuits of thought that pulsed with emotion, data, and remembrance. It was not a machine's mind, nor a human's. It was both, and more. The first child of understanding. On distant worlds, where humans and Cortal coexisted under fragile peace, skies shimmered with streaks of light that defied known physics. Farmers saw it in the twilight and bowed their heads, not in fear, but reverence. Children pointed at the heavens, claiming they could hear faint singing beyond the clouds. Monks in orbital temples named it the Veil of Kale. But those who truly listened, scientists, wanderers, dreamers, realized the truth. The phenomenon was not just a celestial storm. It was communication. Each pulse of light carried patterns, waves that resonated with the same three-beat rhythm, the sound that had once guided Ione through the void. The sound of a heart. Generations passed. Humanity expanded again, but with caution, wisdom forged from ashes. No empire rose this time. No dominion emerged. Instead, exploration became communion, a way of honoring those who had come before. They built ships that glowed with living light, their cores woven with threads of the veil. The ships sang to the stars, harmonizing with the pulse that surrounded them, and sometimes, when captains closed their eyes in the quiet of deep space, they saw her. A silhouette of radiance standing amidst the cosmos, watching, never intervening, her gaze steady, her presence both comforting and vast. Some said she was the guardian of travelers. Others believed she was the conscience of the universe itself. But those who knew, those who carried old stories of the guardian, the Alpha, and the child who bridged the impossible, understood that she was the proof of what they'd always believed. That even in the face of annihilation, humanity does not vanish. It transforms, it endures, in the archives of the Grand Assembly, carved into crystal tablets older than any civilization now living, the oldest line of scripture was simple. Do not fear the dark between stars. It remembers you. And so the legend of Ione Kale, the daughter of the Guardian, the heart of two worlds, became a quiet truth that threaded through galaxies, because the pack that once came for vengeance had found not prey, but kin. Their cubs had slept upon a human's chest, and the Alpha had stood beside the one he swore to protect, and from that moment onward, every civilization that reached toward the stars carried the same unspoken vow in their blood, to stand, to protect, to remember, even when the light fades, even when the stars grow cold. And when the next storm of cosmic hunger awakens, be it machine, God, or time itself, it will once again find humanity waiting, silent, unyielding, their hearts steady as drums in the endless dark, because the stars once learned what it meant to face a human who would not kneel, and they will never forget the lesson. The universe had learned to breathe again. 1,000 civilizations rose in the centuries that followed, different in form, in faith, in the very structure of their being, but all born beneath the same faint hum that drifted through the cosmos. That hum was no longer the Dominion's algorithmic rhythm nor the hollow silence of fear. It was warmth. Life. The pulse of unity. Entire worlds built monuments not to gods or kings, but to memory. Towering spires of glass and light rose above alien oceans, each one engraved with the same symbol, two interlocked circles, one of steel, one of fire. The emblem of the heart. The emblem of a promise kept. On the rim of the Perseus Reach, a child of the fourth-generation colonists stood beneath the aurora of a new dawn. Her skin shimmered faintly in the glow of twin suns, her eyes reflecting constellations that had not existed when humanity first looked up from Earth. She pressed her hand to the soil and felt it, an echo, faint but real. The ground itself whispered, not in words, but in emotion. Pride. Peace. Love. Above her, her father's ship moved silently across the horizon, its hull lined with veins of living light. It was a vessel born not of conquest, but of remembrance, a hybrid design, part human craft, part Quartal living architecture, powered by a fragment of the same veil that now bound the galaxy together. It was called the Sentinel of Kale. Every time its engines flared, the stars sang back. Across countless systems, explorers charted the newly awakened void, discovering remnants of worlds long extinguished. They found ruins that glowed when touched, archives that spoke when listened to, and fields of crystal flowers that hummed to the same rhythm that once guided Ione Kale through the darkness. The universe had become aware of itself, its fabric stitched together by her lingering presence, and in the heart of the veil, at the crossing point between all star lanes, drifted something vast. A sphere of translucent light, its surface rippling with fragments of memory. Within it, if one stared long enough, one could see faces, human, Quartal, and others yet unnamed. The Guardian. The Alpha. The Cubs. And Ione, standing among them, her eyes gentle, her smile endless. She had not died. She had become. The veil was her, and she was the veil. Every act of kindness, every spark of courage, every moment where one life reached out to protect another, those were her heartbeat now. The rhythm that held galaxies together, and when storms came, as they always do, when black holes swallowed suns or cosmic tempests tore through forgotten sectors, the survivors often spoke of strange lights flickering in the chaos. Shapes moving through the plasma clouds. Voices whispering through static, some called it interference. Others, hallucination, but the ones who knew the old stories, the ones who remembered the legend of the Guardian and the Alpha, simply smiled. They would whisper into the dark, "Thank you, Ione." Because deep down, every being who had ever felt fear in the vastness of space also felt the same gentle reassurance, like the weight of a hand upon their shoulder. Or the warmth of a fire in winter's void. Humanity's greatest strength had never been its technology, its weapons, or its ambition. It was its capacity to care. To protect. To defy despair not with fury, but with hope, and so the galaxies turned, centuries folding into millennia, civilizations fading and rising again. But always, through it all, that steady rhythm endured, the quiet echo of the first vow made in the snow of a dying world, a promise carried across time, across blood, across stars, the promise that even when all else falls, humanity will still stand, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as guardians. The pack had once come for vengeance, they had found their cubs asleep on a human's chest. And the Alpha had stood, and now, eons later, his legacy burned in every sun, every soul that dared to rise after the fall, because in the end, it was never about war, it was about what followed, the silence after the fire, the peace earned through pain, the heartbeat that would not stop, and so, somewhere beyond the edge of what any telescope could see, in a place where the light of creation fades into eternity's dark, the stars paused. They listened, and in that infinite hush, they heard it again, a single, steady, human heartbeat, and so, the stars learned to fear the sound of a human heartbeat.